All right, welcome everyone. Welcome to the Black Wall Street Times podcast, where access is the new civil rights. I'm Alexandra Haidara, your podcast host for the Black Wall Street Times. And today we're going to talk about the Carmelo Anthony case, but not just about the legal side of it, but also how racial injustice threatens our democracy and U.S. global credibility. We have the World Cup happening right now, and all of this is happening all at the same time. And so today we're going to talk to Dr. Corey Holmes. He joins with us today. He just published his new book, Golf, Cigars, and Scotch: Balancing Fatherhood, Friendship, and Fine Living. And he's going to talk about the intersection of racial justice, democracy, America's standing in the world. He was a former diplomat. He's an educator, former advisor for Africa, global health, and human rights. And Dr. Holmes has spent his career examining how domestic policies shape international relations and perceptions. So we're going to explore the Carmelo Anthony case, but also really talk about just raising young Black boys today, even after Trayvon Martin and so many others that have been just caught in the U.S. Criminal justice system. So welcome to the show, Corey, Dr. Holmes. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Alexandra.
Okay. Well, we'll just jump into it. So for our listeners who may not be familiar with the Carmelo Anthony case, this involved a young man out of Texas. He was attending his track meet, and it was raining, pouring raining. Decided to go to the other side of the bleachers, and that's when all hell broke loose. There was altercation there, and there's so many news articles on this. I don't want to go too in depth, but just wanted to know like your perception of the case and how why this case in particular has generated so much intense public discussion, and how you see this case playing out internationally, because I understand you're not even in United States right now. Maybe you can tell us where you're calling in from and just how it's playing out in the local news in the country that you're in, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
So I'm currently in Santo Domingo,
Okay.
Dominican Republic. I've been here for a while. It's a beautiful place. So let me answer the first question. So look, Alexandra, it's tragic on so many terms, right? You had two teenage boys, high school, uh, at a track meet, like you said, in Frisco, Texas. And then there was a confrontation, right? And then,
Mhm.
a tragedy happened. Austin Metcalf lost his life.
Yeah.
This week, Carmelo Anthony was convicted of murder,
Mhm.
and will probably, spend the rest of not most of the rest of his adult life incarcerated, right? So at its human core, I don't want to lose sight that there were two families that are devastated right now.
Yeah.
I think of my own son, right? So neither of these two young men will ever walk a college campus in the fall,
Mm.
or go to a college party, or even pledge a fraternity,
Mhm.
or go to a basketball game or a football game, right, and cheer their school. So it's just it's disheartening and it's heartbreaking on
Mhm.
several levels. But I definitely want people to remember the humanity at its core, right? And there's definitely two sides. In the case of um, how it's playing out internationally, um, obviously this case resonates not only nationally, but globally, because there's an intersection of race, juvenile justice, self-defense doctrine, and the role of social media, right? That shapes the public narrative. Like it shaped the public narrative before the trial even began, right? And
Right.
so internationally right now, we're the World Cup is going on, right? Where
Mm.
tonight, the U.S. plays Paraguay, right? And my one of my other teams, my second home, Bafana Bafana, we lost to another co-host of the World Cup. Mexico yesterday, 3-0. Um, but timing matters, right? So there's going to be a heightened spotlight, right? Not on our country, but on our society as a whole. I've had colleagues call me, whether they were from Scotland, whether they were from South Africa, Taiwan, etc. As we're all, gathering to watch some of these World Cup games, they're actually, talking about, what happened this week, the verdict, and so whether you see that it was fair or not, there's a familiar story, right? That a young black man, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, there was a trial that drew a lot of demonstrators to the courthouse on both sides, right?
Yeah, and
Um,
it's getting ugly out there. I mean,
yes,
it's a
it
lot
is.
of I've seen Fox News. Obviously, they
Yeah,
reported that there was a um, threats
yeah,
threats to both families, but in particular the Austin McClass
right.
family. Yeah.
Absolutely, right. And then there was a sentence that some view on one
Mhm.
side, that it was accountable, and other views are that it was just disproportionate, right?
Mhm.
Um, and so the world tends to read, you know, American racial cases like this as a referendum on the country itself. And I would just say, as this World Cup kind of intensifies our global standing, um, that it definitely amplifies this considerably.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I mean, no one's even really talking about the World Cup as much.
I heard,
I mean, I'm
right?
into the World Cup. I even
Okay.
wore my New Jersey, my Nigeria jersey that I bought before leaving
Ah,
the
okay.
country.
All
But
right.
no one's talking about it. Everyone's talking about Carmelo Anthony.
Yeah.
There's some
Yeah.
people are still talking a little bit about the Knicks game, but
Yeah.
particularly
Okay. Yeah.
Carmelo Anthony's case is all over social media. So
Yeah.
I know Dr. King, he famously stated that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. So how does this quote resonate when you're examining cases like Carmelo Anthony's case? Because I
Yeah.
saw that even Bernice King, she made a statement on, at least on social media,
Okay.
about this case. So
Absolutely. So great question. It's almost a year to the date. Last year, I argued in the African Leadership Magazine, which is a online magazine, kind of highlighting what's going on great in Africa. So I did a piece on Dr. King and Pan Africanism. And in my view, we tend to think of that quote narrowly, right? The
mhm,
injustice anywhere line, in my opinion, was not just a domestic slogan. It was a moral architecture of Pan Africanism, a vision he had been building since he went to Accra in 1957, when Ghana first raised its flag to independence. I believe Dr. King saw Montgomery and Johannesburg, Selma, and Kingston as bound together in what we called an inescapable network of mutuality. So
mhm.
when you apply that to the Carmelo Anthony case, that frame asks something harder of us than just picking a side, right? It asks us to not only see um, the Anthony's family's grief, but also the Metcalf's family's grief, right? The structural disparities the case surfaces, but also the global audience watching us right now as a part of his single point of destiny. So, in my opinion, that is the standard of what Dr. King set out, and little by little, I try to uphold that standard in my daily life.
Yeah, no, this case is real sad. I mean,
It's
I
very,
have
very.
a son. He's 13 years old, just
Okay.
finished 8th grade. I'm 5'10", so he's
Wow.
almost as taller than me,
Wow.
and he's
Okay.
gonna be a big man. I
Yes.
don't know what we could do because it seemed like just looking at Carmelo Anthony's background before this incident, 3.7 GPA,
Right.
captain of the football team, captain of the track and field team, worked at Foot Locker. Seemed like he was a man that
Right.
was on the right path. These are the things that every black parent always try to like instill their child: get a job, work, try to start a small business, or do well in school. And then this happened. So can you talk a little bit about your book and just raising young boys? I'm sure these parents, and this conversation is not about judging parenting, but we have to at least understand, because you can do everything you you need to do on your part. But then if society is not having these the policy changes to support young black men in this country, then it's like whatever you do is not enough. But I just kind of wanted you to reflect about your book and the golf, cigars, and scotch, balancing fatherhood, friendship, and fine living. If you had a chance to talk, if you would like to talk about that, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So first I want to say to our parents, right,
Mm.
in our community, we were kind of talking offline. My father, over 40 something years ago, we had this kitchen table conversation.
Mhm.
And it never gets easy. I'm starting to have that with my own son, and he'll be 6 in a couple weeks.
Like, how
Right?
early do you need to
Yeah.
start?
Hey, look. Look. Let's just be frank. Our sons don't get the benefit of the doubt that others get, right? And so a 5-second decision can cost you the rest of your life, right?
Mm.
So for me, loving them means preparing them for the world as it is, while still, trying to fight the good fight, right? And so that's what I want to say to the parents, to our boys, to our Evans, if you will. That's the name of my son. Nothing about your humanity is contingent on how the world sees you. Um, but again, yes, your margin of error, um, unfortunately, is smaller. And pretending otherwise, in my opinion, is not love. It's failure to your children, right? And so, that moment when your ego and pride whispers, that's saying that backing down is a weakness, and um, I want you to take the longer view. I want you to think strategically, right? I want you to do a cost benefit analysis. I want you to say, okay, if I do A, B might happen. And I want to do Z 10, 15, 20 years from now. And so I can't do A because I want to get to Z, right? And so, and then lastly, to our global community, again, as I told you, I live in Santo Domingo, in the Dominican Republic. And look, every society has its own set of issues. I know,
Yeah, because they got a lot of skincare.
yeah,
We had to talk a
yeah,
little bit about that, but they have their own black on black, their black
yeah.
crime issue over in
Um,
Dominican Republic. I'm sure their jails are mostly filled with darker skinned Dominicans
but
and
what I
and
will say
Haitians
though,
too. So,
yeah, yeah, and I don't know if I'm gonna touch that one, but what I will say is, no matter the skin color here,
mhm.
they're national, so they're nationalistic. The only other place that
Mm.
I have ever been in that was that, even with the apartheid regime, right, was South Africa. So it's almost like if you or I go to South Africa, and um, and especially if we think we know it all and we want to tell them about their country, they will stand hand in hand with a white South African because they're both South
Mm.
African, right? Um, as opposed to you in many instances, not all. And I'm telling you what I know because I lived it,
Mhm.
and they were like, "Yeah, you're an American, right?" So a lot of countries see your nationality before they see your race and color, and
Mm.
definitely the Dominican Republic is that. So yes, there are issues, and you kind of spoke on those, um, but the national pride, I'm almost envious in certain cases, and I know that we have a little more charred history
Mhm.
than many of the countries that I spoke about. But that national pride kind of hits different where, one day, I guess that's my utopia, right? Like one day I'm hoping that, it's really all for one and one for all. The only time I think we really
Yeah.
see that what is like maybe when we're going to war, right?
Yeah, or when America's abroad, like if you see white
Yes.
Americans
Yes.
abroad,
Yep.
then we're
Yep.
like all Americans. But in
Yep.
the United States,
Absolutely.
you're Black American, Asian,
Yep.
you're Latino American. So
Yep. Yep.
kind of going back to what we were talking earlier, and so when it comes to democracy and when large segments of the population believe that justice is applied unequally. Like, what do you think happens? Like, especially when Black folks feeling right now, like we've had rollback of civil rights, we've had now we have
Yeah,
this Carmelo Anthony case that's kind of re-energizing the whole Black Lives Matter movement
yeah,
and criminal justice reform in this country.
yeah,
And then you have the World Cup happening in the background,
yeah.
and it's having its own drama because we just we just saw one of a Somali referee that was sent back home. He wasn't allowed to come back
Mm,
to US.
mhm.
So just kind of want to get your perspective on that,
Yeah,
like what happens to this democracy.
yeah. So I want to caveat and say, firstly, I'm a social scientist, right?
Mhm.
But in this particular instance, you get what political scientists call legitimacy deficit. And that's basically just power without sufficient public acceptance, right? And so that shows up in measurable ways, right? When you think about um, lower jury participation, lower cooperation with law enforcement, lower turnout in ballot races that actually help shape and reform the justice system, right? So, as you know, democracies don't collapse from one single blow. It's a slow erosion, right? It's methodical. And it's
Mhm.
withdrawal of public faith in our policies, right? And so, in my belief, that's what's ultimately at stake in these conversations, right? It's we're losing faith um, because we're feeling that in many instances we're wronged.
Yeah, I'm even seeing like op-eds starting to come out about the legitimacy of his sentencing. Saying I saw one op-ed stating that it
Mm,
was right, the jurors were right for giving him the ultimate sentence. But kind of want to get your perspective on racial disparities within the criminal justice system and how that impacts voter engagement and civic participation. We know that um, with all of the rollback of civil rights legislation that's been taking place. Now there's been this re-energizing of voting. Now you have this Carmelo case that is happening, but are people going to take this moment to re-energize and participate more, or are they going to be more apathetic? How do you see this playing out in the elections
yeah,
and local elections, state
yeah.
elections?
I'm just hoping people get out and vote, right?
Mm-hmm.
Too many people have died for the right to vote.
Mm-hmm.
So, however you vote, I just hope people get out and vote. Um, in my opinion, communities with high rates of contact with prison systems show they tend to show lower civic engagement across
Mm-hmm.
the board. So when you think about through felony disenfranchisement, family disruption, and economic consequences of record, I don't believe that's a character flaw necessarily of those communities.
Mm-hmm.
It's more of a structural um, feature of how laws interact uh, with different demographics, specifically Black demographics in this case. So I believe that the remedy is not necessarily encouragement or counsel, if you will, but we need institutional reform, right? We
Mm-hmm.
need tangible results. Um, we need different results.
Yeah. And it's not just even about voting, it's also about like an agenda or policies that go along with it. Like you can vote. Like I've been voting, but I still haven't seen any like measurable changes when it comes to
Yeah.
criminal justice
But you know
in
what,
this
Alexandra?
country.
I know, and it's terrible to say, being from the background, coming from the backgrounds that we come from,
Mm-hmm.
in our careers.
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot of people who didn't vote,
Mm-hmm.
and we're talking at the highest election. So imagine those school board elections where I really think you really see the truest form of democracy
Mm-hmm.
at the state, county, and local city levels. So
Mm-hmm.
imagine if they're not voting at the federal level. I mean, we see it. We see the numbers play out. On pick a network, right? When you have
Yeah.
these local elections, the participation is abysmal.
Yeah, and again, going back, you mentioned about prison system. Are you seeing like foreign governments kind of questioning U.S. global credibility when they look at like they're looking at the ICE detention centers, and now they're looking at like how our prison systems are run in this country, and how is a overemphasis on young Black men that are being caught up in the criminal justice system. Are you seeing that kind of like undermining our democracy, or how is it? How do you see that being played globally? Just
Yeah. So specifically here, I have not. But again, as you know, it depends on the relationship, right? And
hmm
so, um, again, every society has its own issues. How I see it being played out is, I really think it goes back to the vote, the power of the ballot box, right?
hmm
If you want something changed, you have to get out and vote. But like you said, not only voting, you have to start having conversations, having difficult conversations. And I
hmm
know some folks will say, well, you know, people don't want to have engaging conversations or respectable conversations. But I tend to say that there are people out here that will engage um, if in respectable verbal jarring, if you will, right, to come up with a long-term solution, because I believe it's somewhere in the middle, right? It's
hmm
never black and white. It's always gray, in my humble opinion.
hmm Yeah, I mean, for sure. I mean, like you said earlier, we can do our part as parents, and I think, I mean, just based on what Carmelo Anthony was doing before,
Yeah,
it seemed
yeah,
like he was really on the right track as a
yeah,
young man. Can
yeah,
you talk about just like how we can encourage our boys to manage anger and conflict more, and just about your book? And I know this is what, like, I want to state this again, it's not judging or making comments about how the Anthony family raised their son, but
yeah,
this is a problem in our community. I mean, you know, even in my son's high school, that you will see like young men in the hallways, young men fighting. I mean,
yeah,
this
yeah.
is an issue in our
Right.
community. We have to just call it what it is. Not that this justifies what happened, but this is definitely an issue that we need to kind of understand better. So,
Right. So I think young boys only, they see what's in front of them, right? They see
mhm,
what consistently is in front of them. So, and
mhm,
they model that behavior. Um, I don't believe they learn emotional regulation from lectures being talked at. That proverbial parent to child relationship, right? They learn from watching. Men specifically, I'm a man, so I'll talk about being a
mhm,
man, right? They
mhm,
watch men, um, how they handle conflict resolution, how they handle an aggravating situation, um, and how they respond. Um, so I believe, so I try to, and look, I'm not perfect, but I try to show my son my true feelings. So I think one of my greatest superpowers is I do wear my feelings on my sleeve, right? And
okay,
I'm starting to get into yoga as well. So
all right,
breathing is essential, right? So take a breath, right? So before you
mhm,
get that crazy feeling, take a breath. Um, and then choose your response, right? And so I think we have to teach our sons that there's a space, again, that gray area. So that black is that aggravation or that reaction. And the inverse is uh, so one is aggravation and then one is the reaction. I think we need to find that gray space
mhm,
where we all can live, right? And so you talked about my book. I mean, the reason I wrote Golf, Cigars, and Scotch, Balancing Fatherhood, Friendship, and Fine Living, because each one requires patience, right?
mhm,
Um, I believe boys learn the rhythm of slowness, being methodical, right? And so they can take that as they matriculate through life when it'll matter most to them in these
mhm,
crazy, uncomfortable spaces. You have to, so again, take a deep breath. And I think I said it earlier, do a cost benefit analysis, right? If I
mhm.
do A, B can happen, and I still want to get to Z down the line. So I'm
Right.
16, 17, 18, 19. At 30, I want to get to Z. But if I do A, I'll never get there because B will happen. And it'll
Mhm.
deter, and, I'll never get to Z.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, just yeah, it seems like there's not there's only so much we can do, but just looking at so in your book you talk about how fatherhood, you argue that fatherhood is about intentionally shaping character through everyday experiences. So as we approach Father's Day, I just kind of want to know, when you look at the Carmelo Anthony case, what lessons does it offer about the importance of fatherhood, mentorship, guidance? And he had all of
Yeah.
those things.
Yeah, he did. Again, it's that conflict resolution piece. It's that,
Mhm.
okay, no matter, I'm never gonna let anybody get me off my square. Right? Let me just step
Mhm.
back, take a deep breath, walk away. It's okay to walk away. It's not a sign of weakness.
Mhm.
It's actually the biggest sign of strength. Right? And I believe he had great character. I believe he still does have great character, but that character is built in. It's not built in these dramatic moments, right? Like
Mhm.
the moment that happened in Frisco, Texas. It's built through thousands of small decisions, right, that come before these dramatic moments. Um, I believe that by the time a young man is standing in front of this confrontation or a confrontation, that character formation hopefully has been harnessed, right? Me being a young father, the question that keeps me awake at night is, you know, am I am I doing enough?
That was just about to
Right?
say
Am
that.
I doing right? Am I doing it? We always are gonna second guess, right? But that's why you have to have communication with your children, particularly your sons, right? And like I said, walking away is the same thing as not. It's not the same thing as losing. There's a
Mhm.
time to fight, right?
Mhm.
Pride and ego is usually mankind's downfall, right? My wife always says, women are 30 times smarter than us.
Mhm.
They're particularly um, their their emotional intelligence by far, right? Because the pride and the ego of man is usually our downfall. And you touched on mentorship. Mentorship is vital.
Mhm.
I have always tried to mentor. Been mentoring over 20 years, from high school students to college students, early career folks, and even peer to peer mentorship, because that teaches the patience transfer perspective, right? But we
Mhm.
don't often invest in that infrastructure, the mentorship infrastructure, right? The way we need to, as a community and as a country writ large.
Yeah, and then speaking of investing, like what do you see policy wise that you would like to see more to dedicate to support young black men in this country, that you would like to see? Because like we keep saying, we do everything we can as parents. My son was like, he was maybe like
Yeah,
6 or 7 months around. Well, he maybe about a year when Trayvon Martin, during the Trayvon
yeah,
Martin
yeah,
case.
yeah.
This was another young man that had on before all of this happened, was a normal young boy. Like
Right.
what? I don't know. I'm just kind of curious. I see there's more pressure putting on parents, and I get that. But then what about society's role and what their responsibility should be? Because there is
Yeah,
racial
yeah,
disparities when it comes to the criminal justice system. That's, you
yeah.
can't deny that. Yeah.
So I'm going to answer this question with a specific example. I don't see this right now because, like you said, I'm overseas, but I don't know if you do in Washington D.C., but there are a few cities around the country that are doing like these teen pop-ups, right?
Hmm.
Specifically, I'm from Detroit, and so I was talking with my friends, like, what is going on in Detroit with all these and they were the whole gamut. So it just wasn't black, it just wasn't white. It was multifaceted, multiracial, right? But they were just kids, just being very destructive. And one of my friends told me, he said, man, they don't have anything to do. Remember, we had community centers to go to.
Hmm.
We had our neighbors looking out for us. Um, we had the YMCA to go swim and play basketball, play
You sure
chess, play
did.
board games, right? Like we had things to do. When you give,
Free stuff too.
yes, when you, allow a young person
Mm-hmm.
just free reign with no structure. I don't care what background they came from. They're usually going to get into some mischievous behavior, right? And so, society, we have to make sure that we give these kids something to do first and
Mm-hmm.
foremost, right? Give them something to do. And then, look, I know certain actions cause for certain responses, but I just want everybody to remember this is a young man whose life is basically, you know, over. And again, just have that humility, right? And so now I want us to kind of be at the forefront of it, so this stuff won't keep happening.
Yeah.
And that's by again being humane, right? Talking with each other and not to each other.
Another thing
Go ahead.
we need to do is also the mental health
Ah, yeah.
because
Yes.
for
So
this
let's
young
start this
man
with
to
youth,
have,
though.
I think we haven't really touched on it. A lot of people haven't touched on it. I've seen I've seen
Yeah.
different media clips and I've seen the judgment, but the mental health because I'm still perplexed. Like this could happen to anybody's. Well, I wouldn't
Indeed.
say anybody's son, but
No.
like
Okay.
you see young boys who want to prove themselves, and I'm
Yep.
also seeing that there's a lot of racial tension that's happening in this country. And it's being really exacerbated now. And so now this is affecting our children. It's affecting how they relate
Yep.
to each other because we do
Yep.
live in a multi-racial society,
Yep.
and that's going to be whatever. I don't care what laws they're trying to put out. It's going to be hard to go back to if they're trying to seriously go back to Jim Crow. Like that's going to be literally impossible. We just people are just too integrated now. Our lives are just too integrated. So, and now it's impacting our children, this racial tension. So, what would you like to see happening on a policy level or at the state and local level? Whatever you can say. I know you. uh, whatever
Exactly.
you can say.
um, let's again. I am not a mental health expert. I will say this: um, therapy has done wonders for me.
Mhm.
Um, I lost my mother at a young age. I lost my father while I was overseas in South Africa. I lost my
Mm,
sister on her birthday,
I'm sorry
on
to
her
hear that.
33rd birthday, right? And
Oh, I'm
so,
sorry. Yeah.
again, Black men tend to hold all of these feelings inside. And so I don't know how, I can't explain, I can't articulate enough how therapeutic it was for a professional. You need to be a professional without bias, just to hear um, the thoughts that were in my head, the feelings that I had, and to say, and to give recommendations, right? To give practices on what I can do to help heal myself, right? Over time. Um, and so, policies for me, we need to destigmatize mental health because, like you said, this could have been anybody.
Yeah, it
And
really could have.
everybody has, look, Alexandra, everybody has been at that breaking point. Now, some of us don't jump over that edge, but everybody has been at that breaking point if you've lived long enough. And so, again, it's how you deal with, what you're going through, right? And again, having that trigger in your mind to say, okay, let me take a breath, let me step back, let me talk to someone, let me pull out my yoga mat,
Hmm.
right? Whatever you need to do, let me go talk to some friends, let me go on the golf course and just find that peace. Um, I think, um, but within these policies, we need to, um, make it where it's easier for society, right, to kind of tap into some of those resources, regardless of if you can pay for them or not, right? So basically, I'm saying those resources should be for free because it'll
Yeah,
help
they should.
society, to help us writ
Hmm.
large if we have
Yeah, I
a
mean,
stronger
even
functioning
Prince
society.
George, they had like they're doing like this youth development
Yeah.
program
Okay.
to try to increase in Prince George County. That's like
Yep. Hmm.
the famous largest African American center
Fluency, right?
of affluency, middle
Yeah.
class, upper class.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they're trying to step up their efforts, but more needs to be done. Like, just the fact that he's tried as an adult. Now there's debates about that, that he was given too many years. Why wasn't like I've seen cases, discussions where people are comparing his case to another, to the Kyle Rittenhouse case where he killed two people and had an
Hmm.
AR-15 during a
Hmm.
Black Lives Matter protest. So like, what I mean, there's just this thing is so layered.
Right.
Like, there's things that we can do as parents, which his parents thought that we're doing, and then there's things that society has to do to step up its efforts to end the um the school to prison pipeline among young Black boys. So it's just so much, and then you have this racial tension that's happening in the background. Now it's impacting our children and how they interact with each other. Um, it's so layered. So yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, this
I mean,
yeah,
again,
this
I
is
would just say, um, before we get to that, say I'm all about the preventive measures, right? Like before you get
yeah.
to that point, before you jump over that line, and make this the hill that you're, the proverbial hill that you're going to die on.
Mhm.
Ah, I know in the moment, juices are flowing and you're enraged. There has to be a trigger in your mind that says, okay, let me step back and let me take a breath, because there is the potential that my life will change forever, right? We have to be cognizant of that. It might not be fair, but we have to be cognizant of that, because that's
Mhm.
the way it is at this particular point in time. And so, again, like I said earlier, if we don't tell the truth to our children, then we are doing them a disservice, right? We can fight the battles, right?
Mhm.
We can fight the battles. They're still children, but we have to tell them what the world is right now, how it is,
Yeah.
right? We'll fight the battles, right? But our children, we have to prepare them for
Mhm.
every scenario. And I know it sucks. I know it's terrible. No, it's
And
fair, but
yeah, yeah, and have make sure that I've just seen like the case in Allison White stab. He was white, stabbed his classmate, claimed self defense, and then he got lesser charges.
yeah,
So we
yeah,
have to
yeah,
address that. Like, you can't.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
not all on Black parents.
I agree.
I think we've been having a talk since we've been here. Like, since we've been free from, even during slavery. Like, it was just having those talks with your son, don't steal master's favorite cornbread, or I don't know. It's just something that we've always taught our children to make sure that they're on the right path. But yeah, if you can give us any last minute thoughts on, like, just fatherhood and, raising young boys, your
Right.
book. Yeah, this case has been very touching.
Yeah,
And I couldn't
yeah.
even really watch it for a couple of days because I just needed to process it, especially getting ready for my son's graduation and
Right,
just trying to
right.
focus on him. Yeah.
So the book is definitely a guide through my lived experiences on how I'm trying to raise a Black child, to be a global citizen, right? So that's always showing respect, always showing humility, but standing firm, right? Knowing who you are, being confident, right? So I'm always trying to give him unconditional affirmation at home, right? Um, so his sense of self, is not being constructed out in these sometimes hostile environments,
Hmm.
right? But Alexandria, I've also exposed him to the full range of Black men, right? We are tender, we are soft, right? We are emotional, we are intellectual, we are very curious. But we're also uncertain, right? We're navigating this thing called life as well, trying to do the very best we can, right? And so all of that within his space so that he has room to be himself, right?
Mhm.
Um, and so he can articulate his thoughts and show his language of feelings, right? Because I'm not worried about the emotional boys, the boys that cry. I'm worried about the ones who have forgotten how to cry, right? Or who don't cry
Yeah.
anymore, right?
Yeah, that's
Because
where
that's
it comes
letting out
in.
that emotion, right? That's letting it out, whether
Mm.
it's good or a bad cry, right? It's an
Mm.
emotion, it's a necessary um, emotion, it's a human emotion. And so, you know, I know you keep talking about policies, and yes, we both came from the same background. I also was on the legislative side, but now that I'm out of it, I'm looking more of this community aspect, this neighborhood aspect of, hey man, I'm looking out for your son when I'm not around. Please do the same for mine, right? Um, Give me the leeway to uh, not necessarily discipline him, but if he's doing some things that might be some patterns of behavior that I can foresee him getting into some trouble down the line, let me correct that, right? And I will tell you, right? And I would expect you to do it with my son because we're
Mhm.
all in this together, right? We've been so detached now, like every person for themselves. That's not how we were built,
Mm-mm.
right? We're communal by nature.
Yeah.
So, oh, and one last thing. Thank you for mentioning the book, but out of that book, since we're talking about sons and fatherhood, I decided to write a children's book. Right, it's called Evans
Okay.
Chronicles. Yeah, it's called Evans Chronicles, and it'll be out later this summer. And I'm really hoping that definitely our community, but the world writ large, because you know behavior is learned. Children are kind of the same, the world over. It's the behavior that we instill in them that makes it different. But it's a cool book, and it shows my son just being happy-go-lucky and trying to be a productive young global citizen.
Yeah. That's all we want for our children, our young
That's it.
boys, protecting
That's it.
our boys at the family level, at the community level, at the state level, the local level.
Yeah.
And hopefully, and all of this kind of fits into having a strong democracy. So if we
Yeah.
don't address our racial injustice problems here in the United States, other countries notice that, and it undermines our global credibility. So thank you so much for joining this conversation. Happy Father's Day. And yeah, thank you so much for
Thank
joining the
you.
Black Wall Street Times. Thank you.
Absolutely. Keep up
Oh,
the good work. I love what you're doing.
okay. Thank you.